I do want to welcome everyone back. We are delighted to start our first of 4 panels today. This one we are really excited about because we are hosting this due to our interest from our gold medalists who, of all the things they wanted to talk about, they wanted to talk about AI. So it's our absolute pleasure to host this with our friends at Google. I want to thank them and recognize them. I'd like to also thank, of course, Congressman Obolnolty for being here and spending this time with us today, which is amazing. So once again, we will start the panel and then we will leave room at the end, last 15 minutes or so for a Q&A. So there are 2 mics on either side here for our young people to get up and ask questions. No pressure, that will be the hard part. But I would like to turn things over to our moderator, Missy Foxman, our friend from ESA and our board member. Thank you, Missy.
Thanks, Erica. Welcome to the AI for Good panel. It is really an honor to moderate this group of absolute experts on AI. I think everybody's going to learn quite a lot today, and especially Congressman Obolnolty sitting right here to my left, who is the foremost authority on AI. I think he's probably the most knowledgeable elected official in the country on artificial intelligence. So I'm going to just let the panel introduce each of themselves, and then I will start with questions, and we promise to leave some time at the end of the panel for all of you. So be thinking of your questions as we go along. So, Congressman.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I want to congratulate all of you on your accomplishments, and also like to tell you how excited we all are to be here with you as you try and chart a course through your future. We're happy to be a part of that. I'm really delighted to be on this panel. Artificial intelligence is something that has always been very important to me. A little known fact about me is that I never set out to be in elected office. What I wanted to do with my life is to be a researcher in artificial intelligence. So I charted a course through my life through that, much the same way that you sitting here are. I went to Caltech, got a degree in computer engineering, and I was working on my doctorate in AI at UCLA, doing some of the early research in natural language processing and computer vision, when my side hustle at the time, and I'll bet you many of you have side hustles, something I did only to put myself through grad school, was writing video game software. I was working for a company few people had heard of. They called themselves Nintendo. And they had just introduced their Nintendo Entertainment System in North America, and I was most of the way through my doctorate at UCLA when I did a game for the Sega Genesis that I got a sales statement as our first million-unit seller ever, and I remember looking at that thinking, you can actually make a living doing that. So that deflected me out of a career in AI research, but it's always been my first love. So it's a deep honor for me to help to lead the effort here in Congress on AI regulation. I was honored to be the chairman of the House AI Task Force last year, and we are trying this year to get a federal framework for AI regulation done. We call it GAIA, the Great American AI Act, that we are pushing, and hopefully maybe get that into law this year. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in artificial intelligence. We all know it's going to change the world, and so I applaud your dedication for figuring out how that fits into your future.
Sean?
Hi, Sean Whitman. I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the National Congressional Awards Board. My side hustle is serving as the Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Science at the Department of Energy. There are a lot of side hustles within that job too, for sure. The Department of Energy, you might say, well, what do they have to do with AI? And that question gets asked a lot of us. The Department of Energy is kind of a misnomer of the name. It should be called the Department of Everything, as we do a lot of scientific research, and in fact, the department does more basic science research than anywhere else in government. So we are one of the lead and premier science agencies for the federal government. You can also think of things like NASA or NIH, and these are our partners that we work with on a lot of different things. So last fall, we launched with a presidential executive order something called the Genesis mission. And you should Google that, right? That's how we do that. And look up more information. That's not a paid endorsement, but we'll take it anyway. It is to launch using AI and the powerful tools of AI to do scientific discovery. So all of you are thinking about AI, you're primarily thinking about LLMs, or large language models. So we've mapped all the written words that have ever been written throughout humanity. That's a known space. And LLMs have the ability to access that information and do all these super interesting things in coding and all kinds of stuff. And we can talk more about that later. The Department of Energy and the administration's ambition is to say, okay, how can we use AI and those advanced computing resources to take scientific data and do what we did in LLMs for scientific information? And if you look at the Department of Energy, and you think about the decades of history of what that department really has been involved with, things like the Manhattan Project or other major scientific breakthroughs, it's a natural place to host that kind of bleeding edge scientific work. We have what we call the 17 national labs, and if you think about laboratories, you're probably thinking about too small if you're comparing that to the Department of Energy. These national lab architecture, some of our labs are very, very large. So the lab in Idaho is about 40 square miles with about 120 buildings. So these are massive campuses with huge, exquisite scientific instruments. Just think about super colliders or light sources or some of these massive technologies. The biggest telescopes in the world, the most high-performance computers in the world are DOE resources. So it's a place for the rest of the federal government to come and play and do science and to use this emerging space of AI as it leads to scientific discovery, which is a crazy, exciting space, and I invite you to look more about that online, and we can talk more about that through the panel.
Good morning. It's so nice to be here with you all. Congratulations on your award and just being here in this room on Capitol Hill today. I hope that what you hear today is inspiring and is something that you can take through your career, whether you decide to go into public service or policy work or any field that is of your interest. I came to DC for an internship when I was 19. And the bug really dug deep as I've been in DC since then, working in policy. But my name's Jan Antoneros, and I am on Google's U.S. Federal Affairs team. I am happy to be here today representing Google. Our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And that mission was set over 20 years ago. Hopefully you've all used some of our products like Google Search or Google Maps or YouTube, but AI has really been something that Google has been investing in and in our products for a long time. If you are like me and often misspell a word in the Google search bar and somehow magically it still knows what you're trying to type, that is AI and was introduced a long time ago in Google search. Today we are making amazing breakthroughs on AI through our Google DeepMind, which is our AI lab. It is the partnership that we have with the Department of Energy for Project Genesis. And we're have AI applications that are really amazing today that I hope to talk about throughout the panel. But it's really exciting time to be at a company like Google because we are evolving and changing too in this AI transition that we're all living in.
Welcome. My name is Kevin Lefton. I'm a general counsel of a company called Stream. We're a fintech founded in London and over here in the US as well. We're very similar to other companies you may have heard of, actually, called Chime and Earnin and Bridget. We help users get paid faster if they need to bridge that gap between when they earn wages and when they're actually paid. And we rely heavily on AI, both externally with our users, consumers, and then internally to run a business. And if anybody's interested in moving on to the legal world, we use AI in very interesting ways in the legal world as well. But I think the most relevant part of my background that I should mention is that I have been where you are. I am a gold medal recipient from I'll say 2000 but it may have been well before that. But we don't need to put numbers on that. So anyways, thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks so much. AI can feel exciting, but also a little overwhelming. What is one thing that you would like the students to understand about AI that might make it feel more accessible?
Well, I would say that we, as a society, have done a terrible job at articulating the optimistic case for AI. And I think you can see the symptoms of that when you look at the fact that there are commencement speakers that are getting booed across the country this commencement season when they bring up the topic of AI. It shows that folks your age are deeply concerned about job displacement, deeply concerned about prosperity and your access to it. And it's interesting when I look at that to think that, you know, we really haven't told people why we're doing this. I gave a town hall on the topic of AI a couple of months ago in Los Angeles. And at the end of the town hall, I called on a woman who wanted to ask a question, and she'd been sitting patiently through the whole presentation, and her hand shot up and she said, "Congressman, if AI is so terrible, why don't we just ban it?" And I thought my head was going to explode. But I realized that it was our fault because we'd spent the entire hour talking about what lawyers call the parade of horribles, all the bad things that AI was going to do, and we hadn't taken any time to articulate the upside. So let me just take a minute here and articulate the upside from your point of view to AI, the reason why we're doing what we're doing with AI, and the reason it's going to change your world. First of all, let me address the elephant in the room, job displacement, because I don't blame you for being nervous and uncomfortable about that. AI will be disruptive in the job market. Technological revolutions always are. Most recently the internet, but going all the way back to the dawn of the printing press. But each one of those revolutions has created far more jobs for humans than it ever displaced. Particularly the internet. Think about how you would articulate before the internet what a social media influencer was and what they did. I saw a statistic the other day that just boggled my mind. In the year 1940, 60% of the jobs that people do today didn't even exist. So if you look at all the economic experts, AI will almost certainly create far more jobs for humans than it displaces, and that's exciting. AI is already the most powerful tool for the dissemination of human knowledge that mankind has ever created. It can teach anybody anything that they want to learn about in whatever learning style is optimal for them. And that is going to have profound consequences for human empowerment. But, and this is probably the most important from your point of view, AI will likely be the most powerful tool for the enhancement of human productivity that mankind has ever invented. And that should be deeply exciting to you because it's going to help you accomplish anything that you want to accomplish. So it is incumbent on all of us, particularly those of us in government, to make sure that our young people are equipped with the knowledge and the skills that they are going to need to succeed in an AI-empowered workplace. And that's what I would challenge you to do, is to make sure you have those tools. Make sure that you know how to use AI to enhance your productivity. Because if you do, I guarantee you, you will have a job.
Anybody else have thoughts on that? Which was one thing students should understand to make it feel more accessible?
So I'll just say, when I think of AI tools, I couldn't agree more with the Congressman's optimism on that it's going to create productivity, that that AI tools are going to do amazing things for big challenges like detecting wildfires or flood forecasting or personalized medicine for things like cancer or other diseases that today don't have medicines that are impactful. But I also would challenge you, and I am doing this in my own life. I work at Google, but I am still teaching myself how to use AI in my work, to think of AI as an incredible collaborative research assistant. And one of the things that I think is so neat about so many AI tools is that you can ask them to teach you how to use it for whatever task, project, or research you're trying to get done. And so for like instance, Gemini, you can say, like, I'm working on an executive briefing doc. Tell me what the best prompt is that I can use so that I can draft a document that is all about Google's work in AI and healthcare. And the tool will tell you, like, put in the prompt in this way. And I think that's really pretty magical that you can ask the technology how to use it better, and it's really a collaborative tool. I watched my parents navigate from paper to a computer to a smartphone in their career, my own career on Capitol Hill. I'll admit, when I came at 19, we were using fax machines and beepers. And so technological changes happen, and they definitely happen at work. And so being able to use these AI tools like a research assistant, I think is one way to approach them.
I think the last thing, just kind of building on both sets of those comments, most of the conversation in the media is about tech companies making a lot of money and dystopian futures. So it's right after AI takes my job, it's going to murder me and my whole family. I mean, these are like these horrible stories that get spun up and get out of control. There's so many great layers to what is actually happening. You can choose not to be a part of that. That is a choice, but it's a false choice. AI has been building for years. I mean, think about the congressman's journey, how long he's been on it. This has been happening for a long time, just not in the kind of fantastical ways that you see today. The great thing is that you're coming into it at a perfect time. It's your age. You're naturally curious. You're naturally motivated. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't that kind of person. This is the exact same time to be playing with these kind of tools and experiencing it, learning about it, just working through it. It's a fun place to experiment with technology, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. And that we are just at that really big inception phase where people are going to really start engaging. But there's far more opportunity and upside to this story than there is the negative side.
Yeah, I think one thing that everyone in this room should understand is, I think most of you are going to be using it at this stage in your life for perhaps education purposes, which is great, right? I mean, we had our own, I won't call it AI, but if any of you have ever heard of an encyclopedia, right? Back then, that's where we started with our research and our tools, and then it evolved to something like Google, and we punch in what we were looking for. And I think the important thing to remember and understand is that AI is great. It is fantastic. But it is not the solution, and it is not always right. I don't know how many times anybody's ever put something in AI or asked a prompt and then realized the response wasn't completely accurate. And I think you need to remember that it is a tool. It is something, it is a place to start, but you can't let it erase your own hard work and your own intellectual curiosity. Whenever I'm testing out a new simple AI tool like a Gemini or a Claude or a ChatGPT, I always prompt it with something that I know with 100% certainty, and that's I ask it something about myself. I ask it to create a LinkedIn bio for Kevin Lefton. And I can't tell you how many times the response has some of the information mixed up. Right? The schools I went to were wrong, the years I went to were wrong, and to me, that's just proof that, when you guys are using it, you need to remember that it is just a start. It's just, it's your version of the encyclopedia that we go to get information to then figure out where we're going to go from there. And I think that's one of the most important things that I try to reiterate every time we talk about it, is that it's not a solution when you're talking about your own education. It's a start, it's a tool.
You've all touched on this a little bit, but maybe you could flesh out an example of how AI is already being used to solve a meaningful problem in government, science, education, public service, or everyday life. And whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'd like to start with a story that actually involves Google called AlphaFold. So about 45 years ago, the Department of Energy at one of the labs started an exercise to map proteins. So it's this very complex process of shooting light through an image to create this 3D structure. And over that time period, 45 plus years, they were able to map about 200,000 proteins. Phenomenal effort, decades of work by teams of people. Google took that on with a small team of about, I think it was about 25 people, to see what they could do by using the existing work that had been done about how do we understand how to map proteins. And in 2 years' time, they mapped, using AI technology, 200 million proteins. And the way to think about that is that's all known protein sources. They got a Nobel Prize for that effort because of this fantastic achievement. But this is the monumental part of this, and the part that I was telling these guys backstage, that when I'm talking with our science teams, we tell really amazing jokes without punchlines. So that's usually where the story stops. And I thought it'd be great, Jan, to give like kind of the finishing piece of that. Why do we need to know what proteins look like in a 3D kind of resonated image? Why is that important to all of us in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. So AlphaFold is, I'm incredibly proud of Google's work on that project. And one, I'll say, like, it is what AI does the best, is take a lot of data, a lot of information, and organize it in a way and at a scale and speed that would just otherwise take, as our DOE scientists could tell you, a lot more time. And the reason why it matters is I already previously shared I'm a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer when I was postpartum with my son. I was young, I was scared. I was very lucky, as I'm sitting here almost 10 years later, to be a cancer survivor because I was able to take chemotherapy and surgery and radiation, and it worked. But there are so many, whether it's cancer or Alzheimer's or dementia, other diseases today that don't have medicine that actually impacts the disease. And AlphaFold, why it matters, is this organizing of proteins was made public by Google. We released it to the medical researchers, the scientific researchers, the world, for scientists everywhere to be able to use AlphaFold, hopefully for new medicines in the future and personalized medicines that are very targeted on specific diseases. I'm optimistic. I hope that in our lifetime, the results of AlphaFold, it will be something you hear again and again, that AlphaFold enabled this disease to now become a scary thing to get diagnosed, but not a death sentence. And so I think that's one of the projects that at Google, we really see AI as being something that could help big societal challenges, and we're really proud that that project is public and that scientists and researchers around the world can use that information.
So I don't know if you saw in the news just last week that AI solved an 80-year-old problem in mathematics that humans had not been able to solve. But What you might not have seen is the way that AI solved that problem. Because for us as humans, one of the fears that we have about AI is that it's going to displace us. I mean, what a boring world we would live in if all scientific discoveries in the future were made by AI and there was no place for human ingenuity. But I don't believe that that is going to be the case, at least not anytime soon. If you look at the problem that was solved last week, the only reason that AI was better at solving it than humans was persistence. If you look at the chain of reasoning that the AI generated as it was solving the problem, I mean, almost like if someone gave you a math assignment and said, show your work, and you had to work through how you solved the problem, that's what AI was generating. That was over 300 pages long. So humans had been on the right track, as it turns out, but we had just never had the persistence to do 300 pages of reasoning in approaching the solution. So I found that actually very encouraging. I think AI is going to be a great complement to human thought and to human knowledge. I'll give you another example. You mentioned government, solving problems in government. We were in a conference just this morning talking about a new problem that's cropped up in Texas where we've got this parasite from South America called the screwworm that's starting to infect cattle, and it can kill a calf very quickly. So the last time this came through was in the 1970s. It decimated the U.S. cattle herd. And obviously, beef prices are already high, so we're very concerned about this. And the question arose: there's a vaccine against it that'll protect a cow for about 21 days. But the question arose, like, well, how much does this vaccine cost, and how available is it? And we just asked AI, and AI had an answer, because the question was, if it's thousands of dollars per cow, obviously that's not going to be viable. But it turns out it's only about $5 per cow to vaccinate them. And so this was an avenue that we could pursue, maybe getting ranchers access to the vaccine and some subsidy to pay for that. So, I mean, I think that's the way we ought to think about AI, as this huge repository of knowledge that's literally just floating around with us. And so I would encourage you to try it that way if you haven't. Anytime that you wonder, if you're walking around, you wonder, wow, I wonder what that is, and you take a picture of it, you can feed that into AI and say, what is that? If you wonder about what is the history of this issue, that I just started thinking about, ask AI about it. You will be amazed at the things you can learn and the ways that it will enhance your own human thinking.
I think something's been mentioned twice here, and I think it's interesting to talk about that, how some people are concerned that AI is coming for your jobs or some jobs. And perhaps for some it is, but I think it needs to be said that that's not always the case, that just because AI can do something, it's therefore taking a job away from somebody else. While this is not a very exciting example, it is a real example. And in my business, we've been able to close customer support tickets, which is important for our users, right? They have a problem with their technology, their service, that it would have taken 1,000 customer support people to close the number of tickets we closed last year in the record time that we did. Now, people are like, well, that's 1,000 jobs. We never would have been able to hire 1,000 people. That would have never been in the budget. That never would have happened. What would have happened is the inquiries coming in from consumers would have dragged on and on for longer and longer. So when people are saying AI is taking jobs, that's not always the case. Just because AI is doing something, it is not necessarily taking the job. What it may be doing, and what it is doing in a lot of cases, is enhancing the lives of those people that it's helping. And I think that's an important counterpoint to those who say it's taking the jobs.
Absolutely. How can students use AI to be better problem solvers?
I would kind of go back to the research assistant and using it in that way. How can it help you be better problem solvers? I do think humans have a absolute ability to think critically, to identify problems in the world, to do a landscaping of stakeholders, to think about problems from different vantage points. But AI, I think, can really help you work through. Like, I have a hypothesis, I have a theory, I have a task, a project, a question that I'm working through. I think AI can really help you hone your argument. It can help you do deeper research. It can challenge just whether you're preparing for a panel or an job interview or a class. It can help you practice, whether it's something like a math problem where you want to see all the steps put out in place, or something like, I think my professor is going to ask about this X, Y, and Z topic. Can you ask me 10 questions that might be asked on this topic? And so I think it can really enable you to do more and to practice and to learn, and it can really be applicable to a lot of different projects.
I think just kind of reflecting on my own experience, and I would encourage you to play with multiple interfaces. So you could use Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, play with several ones and just see kind of what feels kind of more interesting, how they maybe react differently. But for me, it's the accessibility of it, right? The problem solving, because sometimes you don't know often the biggest problem with the problem is not knowing where to start. And there's a real accessibility to those interfaces through, whether you're using a browser or using it as an app, that is, at your fingertips. It's wherever you are. You don't have to go somewhere physically to do that. You can do that anywhere. You could be doing it right now, hopefully giving us a minute on that. But it's that accessibility, and it's that kind of, there's an ease of how it wants to interact. I would tell you, don't feel like you have to have this super articulate, well-thought prompt question. Just say it how you'd say it. Unfortunately, you can use improper grammar, you can improper diction, whatever. You just say it how you want. You can wrong syntax, whatever. Just say how you want it, and it will prompt out different things. It is an experiment of sorts. There, as you're talking about, as Kevin's talking about, there will be imperfections. There will be things that you won't agree with. I think that's part of the process. It's like doing any other kind of research interface, but the fact that it's so easy and it's so quick to respond with details and challenge it. That's part of what the Congress is talking about. Your experience of playing with this tool, like any other kind of tool, is only going to get more rich the more you figure out how to interact with it based on how you think about things and how it kind of responds.
Else want to add on? I will tell you, in one example I have, I like that I ask it a question and then it comes back and says, are you also interested in this or this or this? And as a matter of fact, I am. It prompts additional questions, which is often can take me down new paths. Kevin, I'd like to start with you on this one as the only recipient or the person who's earned a congressional award on the panel. How can young people use AI as a tool to strengthen their service and impact?
Interesting. That's a great question. I think the best way is whatever curiosity you have, you should, again, use that curiosity with AI to expand it and see where that goes, right? You'll have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I could do this. How do I do this? Right? Should I do this? Is this a good idea? Right? And it's just a great tool for giving you a path, a guide, for trying to figure out what your next steps are. And that's something we didn't have. I didn't have that. It was much more challenging back in the dark ages of 1998. But now I think that's what I would say of how young people can use AI to strengthen their service and their impact. Because you may think you have a great idea, or maybe you think you don't have a great idea, but when you use AI to expand that and expand your curiosity and your knowledge base, it will help you go in directions that maybe you weren't even aware existed.
I would say always think of AI as a tool and not a crutch. It's interesting to me that we've had this huge debate in educational institutions across the country about how students should be using AI in their learning. So show of hands out of curiosity, how many people have seen controversy about whether or not students are allowed to use AI to write papers? Almost everybody, right? And I think that this is a really interesting debate because on the one hand, you can see the logic behind a teacher saying, no, I'm trying to teach you how to write. You're not going to learn how to write if you just have AI write your paper for you. However, I remember back when I was growing up in the 1970s, we had a similar debate over calculators. And we were the ones raising our hands saying, why do we have to learn how to do long division? It's kind of arcane, it's complex, and we've got these new things called calculators, and they can do it much faster than we can ever do it. Why should we learn this? And we were told the same thing. Well, it's important for you to know this. You're not always going to have a machine nearby to do it for you. Well, guess what? Right? If we ever need a calculator, who does long division anymore? I mean, nobody does it because that's something machines do better than we do. And so you can look at this debate about writing term papers from a different perspective and say, why should we not allow this algorithm to figure out how to convey ideas, which frees us up, not to stop thinking for ourselves, but to think at a higher level, to think strategically about what is it that I'm trying to convey. And then I use this tool to help me convey it, right? Which is what I'm doing when I'm writing a paper. So I think it's going to require a sea change in the way that we think about what we're good at as human beings and what we're not good at. And I think AI is going to be that tool that we use to be able to focus on the things that we're best at.
Yeah, to build on that thought, everybody does writing differently, but most people are really challenged by white paper first draft creation. It's like, how do we get started? Where do I start? I've used ChatGPT and Claude and some other services pretty frequently to do kind of that early drafting. I have never used that as a whole cloth, not because I have some kind of moral objection to that necessarily, but because those aren't my words. It's not how I would write. It's not my style. It might not be the right format for the audience or the delivery mechanism of where I'm going. So it is a tool, very much. But I think it's also that thing that it inspires different ways to think about certain things too. So I think it opens your your mental aperture of like, how do I want to think about writing this piece? What are different ideas that I could explore? What are quotes I might want to include? What are, the universe of information that you can pull into your own writing exercise is so much more rich and so much more interesting. I find it, I kind of look forward to doing those writing exercises where I might just really resist and put it off. You're like, this is going to be a fun exercise because I have this tool that is going to empower me to do something and force me to write something that's probably better if I was just trying to crunch through it on my own.
I think in terms of your question kind of focused in on community impact. And I think of AI being a tool if you want to do more than maybe even you have time or expertise to do, that it can kind of serve as a team for you. So if you're trying to plan a day of service, maybe you want to focus on the recruitment element of trying to get your friends and family and neighbors to participate in it, and that's what you're good at, but you're maybe not as great at organizing the work schedule, or you could have AI help be, your marketing, come up with the flyer, or your comms director and draft the press release. I think that AI can serve as a teammate to do more for something that you're trying to accomplish, and maybe on things that you don't enjoy as much or is not like your core skill set or passion. I think it can be true of entrepreneurs too. I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room that have great ideas, about, either nonprofits or businesses that they might want to start, and being able to use AI as a team that kind of has your back, I think could be something to think about.
Thank you. I have a lot more questions, but I'm sure you all do too. So if you have questions, please, there are mics on each side. If you would step up and identify who you are and maybe your state and ask your question, I'm sure the panel would be happy to respond. And okay, great. I don't think so.
Hello, I'm Gavin Choi from California, and my question is what kind of jobs will AI create? You guys mentioned that AI will create a lot of jobs, and I'm wondering what those jobs will be.
So I'll give you a couple of examples. I think in some cases it's hard to articulate exactly what they will be, but that is because those jobs don't exist right now. So let me give you an example. If you're from California, I'm sure you're familiar with the very contentious Hollywood scriptwriters strike that occurred a year and a half ago in Los Angeles. And one of the central tenets in that disagreement was a demand by the scriptwriters union that the movie studios agree not to use AI to automate the creation of movie scripts. And that demand was born presumably out of a belief that if Hollywood studios use AI to write scripts, that will result in fewer jobs for human scriptwriters. But if you think bigger than that, you realize how short-sighted that debate is, because in just a few years, generative AI will be at a place where when I go on Netflix to watch a show, I will not be watching a show as I do today that was created just once for the entire Netflix audience to enjoy. I will be watching a show that's created in real time by generative AI just for me, based on what I've enjoyed watching in the past and what I feel like watching today. And if you think about it, that's going to be many, many, many more jobs for human scriptwriters as a result of that, because you'll have to explore this whole hyperspace of different plot lines, right? And yes, it will be humans who know how to use AI to make themselves more productive and to integrate their storytelling into an AI-generated landscape. But still, many, many more jobs for humans nonetheless. So, I mean, that's just one example of new jobs that'll be created by generative AI. But I mean, you can use that like ad infinitum across all of the different sectors of our economy. I'll give you another example, just a recent example. So one of the things that, one of the job categories that people fear most is going to be displaced are radiologists. And you might think, well, why are they worried that they're going to be displaced? Well, it's because we have highly effective AI-powered algorithms for the automated reading of things like X-rays and MRIs, things that human radiologists do now. And in fact, there was an announcement just 2 weeks ago where a new algorithm was certified for automated readings of MRIs and early detection of pancreatic cancer, which is incredibly powerful because pancreatic cancer, you know, is one of the most deadly forms of cancer. What you might not know is the reason it's so deadly is it's asymptomatic until it's already stage 4, at which point it's very difficult to treat. If you can, it's a slow-growing cancer. If you can detect pancreatic cancer early, you can treat it very successfully, and that's why this is so exciting. So, but the radiologists are worried that if AI does all of this work, there's going to be fewer jobs for radiologists. But interestingly, we are not finding that at all. What we are finding is that the test, the cost of doing a test like an MRI is largely driven by the amount of human capital that we have to invest in interpreting it, and not so much by the incremental cost of the test, right? So because the cost of reading these tests have gone down so much, many, many, many more people are getting the test done because it's so inexpensive. And there still needs to be a human radiologist involved when you've got like a marginal case, something that is potentially positive. Then you want to have a human, go on by the algorithm and say, oh yes, that is a tumor. Or if you've got something that could be a false positive, where a human radiologist looks at it and says, oh no, actually I can see why there's a little shadow there, but that's not actually a tumor, right? So what they're finding is we actually need more radiologists now because we're doing so many more of these tests. So that's another like counterintuitive way that AI is actually fueling growth of jobs for humans.
Thank you.
And we can go over here.
Hi, my name is Yosh. I'm from California. What do you think the next frontier is, right? So I know the AI revolution just started, as Mr. Lefton was talking about, right? So we had encyclopedias. Next we had Google search. Now we have AI. But what's the future from here? What's the next sort of goal?
So I'm kind of biased from the Department of Energy, but I think it really is, to my points earlier, it's about scientific discovery. What does that lead to? So if innovation is the growth force of all economic activity, quality of life adjustments and improvements, that's such a crazy, amazing space. And we're really at these early stages of what that scientific discovery field is going to look like. So think about something like fusion. So everybody probably knows something about fission, which is nuclear energy. Fusion is harnessing the power of the sun and creating that in a controlled environment for an energy source. That is so complex and so mind-bending for humans. You're talking about a lot of quantum physics and complexities that really is just outside the human understanding of how do we do that, to create that flash moment of sun-type energy. Through the power of AI, we can synthesize and do some of those experimentations that really exceed human understanding. And that could be something that happens in our lifetime. So what does that mean? And that's just one little slice of scientific discovery. Think about if we were able to create fusion energy. What does that mean for the global south, for the entire world that has usually has huge energy poverty? There's a one-to-one relationship between available energy, affordable energy, and to quality of life. So if we're breaking the code and breaking the paradigm of you can have something that's faster, cheaper, better, what does that do for every single scientific field you can think of? Everything. Think about what it means for applied materials and things that that are in the palm of your hand. Thinking about your phone. Every little interface and every intersection of your life of where we're trying to do something new and different. So this is that big explosion of activity is going to be in science.
Hi, my name is Lucas Pipkins. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. You guys mentioned workers at the beginning of the panel, and I kind of wanted to go back and highlight that. So I was wondering, what investments or policies do you guys think that we could use to have AI enhance workers' earnings and productivity rather than just reducing labor costs?
So I guess I'll take this since it's a policy question, and I would encourage you to read, please, the draft bill that we dropped last week. We call it the Great American AI Act. We have a whole section, a whole title of the bill that deals with workforce issues. And what the challenge is to differentiate what is government's responsibility when it comes to this disruption, right? Because you could take the point of view that government should prevent the disruption, because we could do that. We could make a law that says that you're not allowed to use AI to displace humans. But the problem is that's denying our country and millions of Americans the benefits of the increased productivity that AI can bring. So, for example, if you were going to build a house and you need to dig a big hole for the foundation, you would probably have a backhoe come in and do that work. We could take the point of view that that displaces humans, and instead we're going to make that illegal and force you to use humans with shovels, right? In fact, if you take that to its extreme, you could say, well, why are we letting them use shovels? We should force them to use spoons, because that would be many, many more jobs for humans, right? So where do you draw the line there? The answer is you can't draw the line, because the moment the government intervenes that way, you're increasing the cost of you building the house that you want to build, right? And that's not something that government should do. So what is the role of government? Well, we think the role of government is kind of multifaceted. First of all, we need to make sure that young people like you are equipped with the tools and the knowledge that you are going to need to succeed in an AI-empowered workplace. So we are creating funding and grant programs for the creation of educational curriculum around AI. We're creating grant programs for the training of new teachers that have the technical knowledge about AI that they can pass on to their students. We're creating new fellowships for early career AI researchers to make sure that the U.S. continues to be on the forefront of AI development and deployment. The second thing that we need to do is we need to make sure we focus on reskilling, because we know even if you are an optimist and you believe that AI is going to create more jobs than it displaces, which the majority of experts do, there's still going to be a lot of disruption. So we need to make sure that we have the resources there to reskill people who are coming out of professions that get displaced by AI, and to equip them with the tools they're going to need to transition to another career. And yes, there will be people who fall through the cracks. We need to make sure we beef up our social safety nets to make sure that those folks don't get left behind. So, I mean, I think that if you look at that, if you look at the landscape through that lens, through the lens of what should government be doing, that those actions kind of make sense.
And if I may, real quickly, I think from a corporate point of view, I think that's a great question, because instead of having employees come in and be scared about their jobs being taken, they should come in and say, how can AI enhance my productivity, right? How can I use it to help me do my job? I use it often in the legal world. If I have to write a letter, a cease and desist letter, termination letter, right? I have three choices. I can spend an hour writing it myself. I can have AI write the whole thing and shoot it off, in which case I'm confident it won't be 100% accurate. Or I can ask it, to draft me a template, and then I use it, and I go through and I put in my own words, my own thoughts, but it saved me probably 25 minutes of time, and so that's a productivity enhancement. And I think, to your question, I think companies should have policies that, yeah, AI is just fine to use, but make sure you know how to use it the right way to be productive and not to do your job.
Thank you.
We're going to go to a lightning round now. We have a lot of questions. The congressman has a meeting. I need to make sure he makes it. So 30 seconds per participant and with the answer. So go ahead.
Hello, my name is Shreya Gupta. I'm from the San Mateo County in California, and I've read into the CREATE bill that you created, and I do respect that there's a lot of AI regulation going on, but I'm trying to look at the positives and what we can do for the youth. So my question is, what skills do you guys think the youth and us as a generation, what conversations we need to be having and what skills we need to invest in order to succeed in our careers? Like you mentioned radiology, some people say that we should invest in a career in science and have jobs in radiology, but there are also pros and there's also cons when AI is being developed.
Sure. So 30-second answer. Whatever it is that you're passionate about, whatever it is that you decide to take your career, what direction you decide to take your career in, ask yourself the question, how can AI be used as a tool to make me more productive at doing that? And if you can answer that, you will add value to not only yourself and your career, but whoever ends up employing you.
Hi, my name is Cassie Golden. I live on Maui in Hawaii, and I use AI a lot in my life, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing, but I think a really big concern of young people right now, and I'd like to direct this at Sean Whitman from the Department of Energy, I think a really big concern for young people right now is the environmental impacts, and I'm wondering what you're doing to minimize them or maybe assist in these concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you always have to think about how you're going to use resources appropriately, right? With any tool, with any development. I think there is a lot of misinformation that goes around out there talking about how energy intense things are, or water use, and the water question is, I think, very regionally specific. Some places are just going to be inherently more water sensitive. On the energy consumption thing, it's a two-part piece, right? There's an environmental story and there's an affordability story. The affordability story is one that we need to have commitments by companies that are building, and you've seen that through pledges that the president's led, through companies saying we're not going to increase rates for customers as we build out this capacity. You know, for the environmental standpoint, I think we're learning a lot about how to make these things far more efficient. So if you look at the use of an LLM, if we're using the same powerful tool to do a lot of really simple questions. So I think from a performance standpoint of how the interface works, we can use different kinds of, and create different kinds of maybe small language models that solve for that 80% factor of those kind of more simplistic tasks versus using this big, powerful, like race car technology to solve simple solutions. The other is when we do that, the actual physical infrastructure that goes in a data center, you can start to compress and start to do different things with cooling properties, energy use. So I think it's an evolving set. The ironic and maybe great thing is that AI can actually help with some of that evolution of how do we make these things better and more efficient. But we absolutely need to have that front of mind and part of a problem-solving kit all the time.
Thank you.
We unfortunately are right at 11, so I have to thank the panelists. If maybe some of them can stick around for a few more questions, during the break. Thank you, everybody.
I do want to thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists, and again, for some panelists that can stay, we appreciate that to meet with our young people. But I do want to thank Google. Google has committed with their education tools to allow for our congressional awardees in particular to use that for free and to become certified and become educated. So we thank Google for that level of support, and we look forward to utilizing that. Thank you.